When I see people like Chris Evans, that's Captain America. Right. When him being like, quoting Hannah Arendt, the origins of totalitarianism, I'm like, yes, that's my president right there.
So, first of all, congratulations on your new movie, The Oath.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in this film,
Yes,
so I would love just to hear how the idea for it came about and just a little bit about the film itself.
Do you guys remember the 2016 election?
Take me back.
Hillary Clinton ran against the host of The Apprentice and lost, shockingly. But that Thanksgiving, right after the election, after dinner, having a few drinks, and my mom and my brother and I got in this pretty gnarly argument about the election. We're kind of blaming each other. It's your fault. And the next morning I got up and I said to my wife, I was like, we all voted for the same person. And we were yelling at each other. I at one point said to my mom, because of you. And I was like, God, if that's happening at this, relatively friendly table, what's going on at other tables around the country? And as I started talking to friends of mine and hearing their horror stories and their kind of war stories, I knew that the landscape of the American holiday table was done, as we know it, and that it wasn't going to come back anytime soon. And I knew that there was something scary, very funny, and just kind of absurd about the climate we were all in, and how we were getting our news, and how we were processing our news and sharing our news with each other. And so I wanted to kind of take that feeling, that claustrophobic, awkward feeling of being in the house,
right,
and blow it up.
And blow it up you did.
We blow it up. We blowed it up real good.
I blowed it up real good. One thing that really struck me about this film is the tone of it, because it's a comedy, but then it gets really dark. Really dark. Yeah. Especially, I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but with the character Mason,
yes,
scared the shit out of me.
The great Billy Magnuson is a terrifying individual. So, I'm glad he's an actor and not a real government agent.
Well, I'm sure there's government agents
that are like him.
Yeah, pretty much. So when you were thinking about this film and thinking about the spectrum of tone, like, where did you want it to land?
Well, I knew right from the start that I wanted it to be reflective of the emotional roller coaster that we go on every day. You go on Twitter and you're like, oh my God, look at this video of a dog wearing pants. And the next one's like, and it's a mother separated from her child on the border. You start crying. And
you'll win some, you lose some.
You win some, you lose some. And I knew that if I made this just like a pure comedy, I think people would kind of say, yeah, it's not deep, and you're not paying any attention to the gravity and these very real problems and very raw emotions people are feeling. And I think on the same token, if I made it just a very dramatic thriller, first of all, that's not really me. Yeah. And I think people would say, well, now you're missing out kind of the heart and the humor and the kind of the family of it all. So I always knew it was going to be this kind of balancing act. And there are other movies that kind of have moments like that, where there's something like a gut punch and then a laugh, but to kind of sustain it for a whole 90-minute film was something that I knew was going to be a challenge. And this is where I really have to give a lot of credit to my friends, not to drop names, but Jordan Peele, my friend. He saw it and he was like, I love it, I love the tone, and make sure you're balancing it perfectly. Yeah. You'll have a really scary emotional scene, you'll cut it with a joke, which is so great, but then you got like another joke or another little funny moment, you tip that scale too much, and all of a sudden the audience starts to program their mind and they're like laughing too much. Right. And then when you ask them to get sad again, it's that much longer for them to get there. So every subsequent cut after that, we really made sure it kind of passed the Jordan Peele test and made sure that the tone was balanced enough where we are asked, because we're asking a lot of the audience to laugh, cry, be scared, and so it really was a balancing act.
Right. And so, I mean, you've mentioned before that you don't want this film to be a partisan film. Like and even though it has a lot of political undertones to it, obviously. So who would you say this film is for?
I say this is for Americans who are not so dug into their side that they still are tethered to reality. Because we just don't have it. I would love to be able to say, look, I'm a liberal myself personally. I would love to be able to say that it's only the far right that's completely disconnected. It's not really true.
Right.
Some of my best friends who are hardcore liberals, for whatever element, they're just not really tethered to what I call the real America right now. So, I think we've taken it all over the country. And the thing that people say the most is, it's like you watched My Family and you made a movie about my family. And that character's my uncle. And Tiffany Haddish is my wife in this. And so I think it's for people who want some catharsis.
Yeah.
And they're sick of not just, you know, the political climate, but the way it's permeated every aspect of our culture.
Absolutely.
And I really, at the end of the day, I just want people to go and laugh and be scared. And also the deeper kind of takeaway is these connections with our friends and family. If you have a relative who supports Donald Trump and you don't support for Donald Trump, and you can't believe that your Uncle Tom, your
Uncle Tom.
Uncle Thomas.
Hey, on my side of the fence,
Tom.
there's a lot of Uncle Tom.
That just kind of fits. That was so organic and it fit perfectly.
Comedic genius right here.
My Uncle Tom right here. I can't understand why he likes Trump, and he's a pain in the ass. I'm not gonna talk to him anymore.
Right.
I'm gonna remove that stress from my life. Well, what happens with that, I think, is first of all, it's bad for Uncle Tom because he is not gonna have any other source of alternative news, right? He's only going to stay in his bubble, and I think we will too. And we're already in bubbles now forever, right? And we should try, at least with our friends and family. I'm not talking about random strangers on the internet and coworkers you don't necessarily have to deal with. I'm talking about the people that we are supposed to have these connections with, that are supposed to be permanent. If we cut those cords, our bubbles will become smaller and they'll become thicker. And I'm a student of history, and when people go into those thick bubbles and they become internal emigres, that's when the really bad stuff starts happening.
And that's what I found interesting about you, the character you play in the movie, Chris, because he's the liberal that will not let you forget he's a liberal.
Yes.
Like just shoving it down your
sleeve,
throat.
yes. Shoves it down your throat.
And so, you know, and obviously he had, like, his brother is kind of his main
combatant.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
That's my real brother, by the way.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I know, it was just perfect casting. But I feel like making this movie, has this challenged any of your preconceived notions? Because you mentioned that, you know, obviously you're a liberal yourself. So in making this movie about kind of finding that middle ground, especially with your family when it comes to like this discord, has it challenged any of your preconceived notions?
Yeah, I think my kind of cutoff point, and I wasn't cutting them off, but my kind of like, I just want to talk to them right now, was they voted for Trump. And I now know that there's a difference between someone who voted for Trump in 2016 and someone who supports Trump in 2018. There's a big difference. And I think if people on my side of the aisle lump those two together, that's probably not great, because first of all, there's a very real thing called buyer's remorse. And like, I know people who voted for Trump and they don't like him, and I'm not saying you should change or bend to them, but at least listen to them. And again, if you have someone who's like, in 2018, I love Trump, I love everything, I love what he said after Charlottesville, I love Brett Kavanaugh, okay, we're in a very different place, and I'm gonna just say that to you. I'm gonna go get some pie, and I'm gonna go take that whiskey bottle and break it over my head. But if there's someone, you have a relative who's like, I voted for him and I just hated Hillary Clinton, and he's kind of embarrassing with his tweets and stuff, and I don't know, but I don't hate him. I can work with that. I can work with that, and I can tell you, and it's important that I tell you how I feel and how I think, and at least in my community, in my life, those changes have been very adversely affecting people, because then at least that person has an opening, and if they can see a little bit of the kind of the hurt and the stress and the very real anger that we have, it unlocks a little bit of the empathy that they might have, which is something that I feel like the other side lacks, is empathy. Absolutely. And so if they can see that and take a little bit of that with them, then maybe it can just chip away a little bit at that wall, and then, you know, you can maybe get that desired political outcome you're looking for.
You've obviously had a few writing credits before, a few directing credits before, but this film is really the first time you're really steering the ship as the writer and the director. Yeah. So what has this whole experience taught you about your own creative process?
Trust it. Because it was a weird idea. It was a weird idea. It was weird, but luckily, like, my family and my friends, Jordan Peele.
I mean,
got it right here. But they encouraged me. They said, "This is you. This is really you in a script, and this is you in a movie." And you know, to go across the country and have people come up, and you have the relatability and you have the connectivity of, "Oh my God, thank you. I'm laughing, and this is good, and it reminds me of this." It just validates the fact that I'm going to tell stories, and I want to do it more, and I want to tell different ones, and I want them to be as reflective of this insanely absurd world that we're living in right now.
And the thing is, it is an insanely absurd world where, you know, that saying, you know, truth is stranger than fiction is entirely true. Yeah. And I feel like you could have you could have taken it directly head on, like, you know, you could have actually had Trump as a character,
Yeah.
you could have, you know, really even picked any of his insane policies
Sure.
and just like riffed off of that. So why was it important for you to make a movie that was adjacent to what's going on and not directly addressing it?
First of all, I think satire is best when it's very directly about it, but one step removed, so you're not actually saying. I think if you say the name Trump, it's so loaded. Yeah. It's so loaded that even someone who would maybe see your movie, the minute they hear Trump is the villain, even if they don't like Trump per se, there's just fatigue.
Yeah.
That's the thing is they wear you down, right? Yeah. They wear you down and stuff. So to me, to kind of set it in a very close to reality adjacent, as we say, a world where people, things are familiar enough, where people, like, again, relate to them and they say, okay, that's how I feel, and I'm just like Chris, without having all the extra baggage that the actual names and the actual events have. If I made this movie about Trump and child separation, I think people would just be, it's too much, right. Too close. And this just gives them enough buffer room to let their mind process that they're seeing a story with characters they've never met before, but it is very connected to what they're going through in real life.
That's fair. And, you know, speaking of satire, I came to know your work when you were on Mad TV, which amazing season. That was like, you know, you and, you know, Seth Meyers, obviously, who's in the film, has like a very brief cameo in the film.
Yes, that's Josh Myers.
Josh Myers, yes, Josh Myers, yeah. But I feel like I got to know your work through Mad TV, and obviously that's, you know, they're excellent at pinpointing satire and making fun of, you know, social and political events. And so there's been a lot of conversation lately that the PC police is just kind of out of control in terms of curbing how we receive comedy and maybe even how, you know, comedians like deliver their material. Sure. So for you in 2018, what is effective political commentary? What does that look like for you?
I think it has to be honest. Yeah. I think it helps if you do kind of do some self-examination and you shine the light on the people who are on your side of the aisle, so to speak. I think being aware, you know what I mean? And I think the most important thing is not being resistant to evolution. You know, when I hear people say, I'm not going to be funny anymore, I can't tell my good jokes, then they probably weren't that good. Right. If you're so worried that the jokes you're going to tell now are so offensive that they're not going to get laughs and you can't tell them anymore, well, that's your problem. And I think the great comedians, I watched Chris Rock's stand-up special last year. It was incredible. It was the most personal stand-up special he's ever had, and it was very different from Bring the Pain or Badder and Blacker. And there was definitely things in that he probably couldn't quite say right now, right? There's just different areas that, you know, and I think a lot of that is kind of a pushback to Trump. You know what I mean? Like the kind of the far right of the country has become so cruel and severe that people are saying, no, I don't want you to say that to me, and I'm not going to support you. I'm not going to go see your movie if you say that. So it makes sense to me. And you know, anyone who says, oh, it sucks, I can't tell that joke anymore, well, then tell a different joke. Figure out a different way to get your point across. Like there are so many examples of amazing comedians who have been able to evolve. Sarah Silverman. Like, I love Sarah Silverman so much. She's one of my all-time favorite stand-ups. Some of her stuff from the early 2000s, she couldn't say that now. I mean, she could, but I think she would, you know, upset people. And, but she's grown and she's changed. We all grow and change, right? I mean, there's Don Rickles, who just kind of always did it, who was great because he was actually in reality like the nicest guy in the world, and it was kind of an act. But to me, the comedians I like to watch and the ones I connect to are the ones who do grow and we do change. You know what I mean? Some people are like, oh, don't change, never change. It's like, no, you change it's natural. We get older, our hair gets grayer, our backs start bending. It's just, that's evolution. It's natural. It's very organic. And to complain and say, well, here comes the PC police, to me that's a bit of a red flag. When I hear that, I'm kind of like, oh, you're not that funny.
Well, so on that note, what has been your personal evolution as a comedian?
I definitely feel like, you know, the characters I've played in movies have been definitely kind of the descendants of the Apatowian man-child who just kind of says whatever he wants and doesn't care and is just a complete idiot. And I think just age is kind of, aging out of that a little bit. You know, there's something kind of funny about seeing a guy in his mid-30s being a complete moron who says things that are incredibly sexually insensitive or racially insensitive. But when you have a guy who's like, you know, on the, you know, a little bit north of 40 doing it, it's kind of like, it's just age out of, So I think, you know, for me, kind of moving from that kind of just lovable goofball to doing some different stuff and stuff that, you know, things like this. I think Blockers was kind of my, like, And I think the story of Blockers really kind of gave that a nice bow, where it was like he was a guy who was the first, 90% of the movie is just this rage and just saying the dumbest things, and then by the end he's like, I love you, my good daughter. And so to me, I'm excited to kind of start playing parts that and telling stories about people that are a little more grown up. But don't worry, I'll still play morons, just different kinds of morons.
And Chris is a very well-meaning, lovable moron.
Yes, he's still a moron. He still says the dumbest things.
But you're still rooting for him.
You're still rooting for him at the end of the day, just because he's married to Tiffany Haddish. I mean, that's a cute kid.
You said it, not me. I was going to say that's a huge draw. That's a huge win for Chris.
Oh my God, yes, yeah. Someone said, I think one of the cruise guys go, "You don't deserve her," and I didn't know if he was talking about the character or me. I was like, dude, come on, man.
Rude.
Yeah, rude.
But true. Just kidding. No.
No, it is. I'm very aware.
So a lot of entertainers are really exercising their political voice and entering into this political fracas, if you will. Yes. So what effect do you think that really has?
Nothing but positive, at least in my book. We're 48 hours out of Taylor Swift dropping the bomb for Phil Bresnan. Finally. And that's the thing I've been saying is I never begrudge anyone. This is America,
Of course.
You can do whatever you want. But I always was like, when I see big names just kind of remaining totally neutral, even on things like telling people to fucking vote. You know what I mean? I'm always like, why aren't you doing it? And when I see people like Chris Evans, that's Captain America. Right. When him being like, quoting Hannah Arendt, the origins of totalitarianism, I'm like, yes, that's my president right there. But look, 48 hours ago, Taylor Swift said, hey, Phil Bresnan, he's the guy we should be voting for because he cares about gay rights and climate change. Right. And we are seeing a massive spike in voter registration in the last 24 hours. So any celebrity who says, well, yeah, I'm not going to say anything, it's not going to do any good, that is such bullshit. People connect with you on whatever level, whatever your music or your art is, they connect with you and they look to you. They look to you as almost like a philosopher, right? Especially if you're a musician or a writer. So I say to any person that has any kind of platform, if you really are, someone who just wants to kind of just let this all die down, like I'm not going to fault you for it. I personally don't understand it, but I'm very inspired by the people even people who are politically neutral are like, coming up and saying like, hey, we have to vote. Even it doesn't matter who you vote for, but like democracy is a little shaky right now in America, and if we don't reinforce the base of it, who knows what could happen. It's very fragile. So I'm overjoyed when I see people coming forward, whether it's Taylor Swift on the left or, I don't know, Stephen Baldwin on the right.
Fair enough. Random reference to Baldwin. God.
James Woods.
And done with that with James Woods. God.